violin, and my parents, of course, decided it's time to have a son, and I came alone. I don't know if any of you feel that you were going to be a little girl and then they got that little boy. But I know that my parents really wanted a boy, and most of all, my parents were coming from an era where you either married up or you married down. And my father was a tailor, and my mother said that she married my father because her sister, who was younger, married, and it was a shame because the older one's supposed to get married. And so I was right from in my very, very younger years observing my parents communicating, and my mother somehow thinking that she married down. So my father became a couturier, and when I was about 6 years old, my father said, you have a beautiful body, you're going to be a ballerina, and you're going to be the best dressed girl in town. So I say, Papa, watch me, I am very fashionable, and telling always myself, I guess my papa would be very proud of me. And being interviewed by my most wonderful people, the Chabad, because love is not what you feel, it's what you do. And you are totally committed to know everything and everyone, to bring us together, to see how we can form a human family. I have, after beautiful 2 girls, my son was born. And my late husband was so proud that he's going to carry Rabbi Akiva Eger, the proud father. But my son didn't develop the way my girls did. He didn't sit up on time, he didn't walk, he didn't talk. And when in 1960, when he was 4 years old, I was told that I better prepare my son to go to the school for retarded. We don't use that word anymore. So I asked, where do I get a second opinion? And I was sent to Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And after 1 week, he said to me, your son is not retarded. He looks that way, he has the droopy eyes, but he's going to be what you make of him. Imagine I was sitting there and shaking, and then he said, your son is going to have occupational therapy, speech therapy, and whatever he said. And then he's going to do everything everyone else does. It's going to take him longer to get there.
Right. And I saw that, and you talk about that in the book, how he blossomed, that despite this disability, he's done great, graduated college, etc.
He doesn't have time to be a victim. He's blind, and I went home, I dropped out of school, and my son John graduated as top 10 student from the University of Texas. So I am really advocating. My son doesn't have time to be a victim. He goes to Washington, he fights for the disabled, even though he's blind. He really says also, besides, my mother is a survivor and I come from good blood. And not only I come from good blood, but all of us Jewish people come from the blood of our ancestors who didn't have it as good as we do. Mm-hmm. And they were walking on the desert, I don't know how many years. And one thing I know, that they never gave up. So I hope today I'm going to let you know that there is hope in hopelessness. There is maybe another way that you didn't try something. And maybe you want to know that you can look at things from different perspective. And I'm going to introduce to you Auschwitz as an opportunity where my God was guiding me not to allow the enemy to murder my spirit.
So you mentioned, talk a little bit about that. When you went to Auschwitz, you faced probably the greatest monster, and talk a bit about that and how that happened.
Yes, everything happened so quickly. We were told in the cattle car that we're going to Hungary to work on the fields, and not until I saw Arbeit macht frei, I never heard of Auschwitz. And my father said, it's okay, we're just gonna work and then we go home. That didn't happen at all. We stood in line, my sister Magda on one side and I on the other, holding our mother in the middle. And that monster asked, is this the mother or your sister? And I never forgave myself and I said, it's my mother. And pointed my mother to go to the left. And I followed my mother, and that very man who annihilated my family held me and said, you're gonna see your mother very soon. She's just gonna take a shower, and threw me on the other side, which meant life. And then when I arrived in the other side, a couple, a fellow inmate, took my earrings and pulled it out, and I was bleeding, and I said, you know, I would have given it to you, but I didn't know anything about displaced aggression. She took her anger out on me because I was part of the final solution of Eichmann. I came from Kassa, Hungary. I was one of the last.
And that was Dr. Joseph Mengele who you actually met.
The very man. So, you know, here comes to you. I always like to talk about Camus' absurdity, that the very man who could have just let me go. But you know what? I have a picture that I wore a beautiful silk dress that my father made me with two beautiful balls. And I bet maybe he thought, maybe, just maybe, this girl doesn't have to die right now. I have all kinds of ways to know that somehow I survived, so I can be with you today, that I can guide people not to ever give up, because I'm a very proud Jew, and you are also truly my ambassadors, that you take care of my son. The Chabad is embracing my son too. You don't care about age or religion or anything else. You are truly ambassadors for peace and goodwill.
Thank you. Thank you. Once you, can you talk a little bit about your experience in Auschwitz? How did you survive? You had about a year of just hell, it seemed.
I think Auschwitz was hell. There is no other way, because we never knew what's going to happen next. I was always curious to know what's going to happen next. So when we arrived, and when I was told I'm going to see my mother very soon, she's just going to take a shower. So I asked that couple, by the way, when will I see my mother? And she pointed at the chimney, and fire was coming out, and said, yeah, you're not going to see your mother anymore. She's burning there. And my sister hugged me, and she said, the spirit never dies. So the reason I'm there and doing what I'm doing is because I owe it to my parents. I owe it to the parents to tell people that what happened and how good people do terrible things. And so people who deny the Holocaust, I don't really argue with them at all. I just let them know that the German consulate will tell them what happened. And today I am really reminded of the fact that the largest Jewish population today in Europe lives in Germany. And so we want to hopefully see how we can learn and how we can unite and form a human family. So that's what.
I'm fascinated by your distinguishing victimhood versus victimization. You say that one comes from the inside and one from the outside.
Yes, you see, I refuse to be a victim. It's not my identity, it's what was done to me. And I think that's very important that I was victimized, but it's not who I am. I am a person who has joy and passion and freedom, and hopefully being a role model to young people to stay in school and find a way to bring a better world. And I know that you are totally committed to the same thing. So I'm your ally, all right? Good. And of course, I'm gonna be 93 years old, September 29th, and my new book is coming out September 15th, The Gift, that is a self-help book. And I'm writing the third book with my daughter on recipes.
I'm
So
sorry.
if you have any good recipes, I want your recipes.
Dr. Eger, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's some people having a little bit of a hard time hearing you. If you can try, just either push the microphone a little bit closer to your mouth or speak a little bit louder.
Yeah, okay.
It'd be
I'll
great.
do my best.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Ella. Thank you.
So,
Tell me what you do.
well, yeah, you're good. You sound great now. So one of the most
Thank you.
influential books coming out of the Holocaust was by the psychologist Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's
Yes.
Search for Meaning. And
Excellent.
I thought it was really interesting how you actually met him and he became like a mentor for you. How did that happen?
I was at the university when someone handed me the book, Man's Search for Meaning. And I went home, and in the middle of the night, I started to read it, and I wanted to write 10 more pages for everyone. I don't know if you ever read such a book. And I realized that if he's using these words that I didn't know myself, he gave me the verbal capacity, because I didn't want anybody to feel sorry for me. So I went completely underground. I just wanted to be a Yankee Doodle dandy, as I say that. So he was truly my mentor, my colleague. I did the keynote address for his 90th birthday, but he was 30 some years old in Auschwitz. He was already a medical doctor, and I was a 16-year-old in love. So there is a different generation with different hopes and dreams. My boyfriend and I belonged to the Betar. We were Zionists, very strong Zionists, and we were going to go to Palestine together. We had hopes and dreams that we're going to really just be people who are doing everything in their power to build Palestine. But unfortunately, my boyfriend died the day before liberation. But before, I want to tell you, I was put on a cattle car. He told me, "You'll never forget my eyes and my hands." And that kept me alive in Auschwitz, asking everybody, "Tell me about my hands, tell me about my eyes." So if I survive today, then tomorrow I'm gonna meet my boyfriend, even though I was told I'm never gonna get out of here alive. So today I tell people, don't really answer people who are telling you that the Holocaust didn't exist, and just don't really allow them to get to you, and don't allow anybody to disturb your peace of mind. Because while you are angry at others, you suffer more. So I am very selective who's going to get my anger at this time in my life.
Right. And one of the things I found very interesting is that you say that there's no we until there's an I.
Yes.
And that would seem to be a theme, not only, you know, at Auschwitz, and later on, even when you made the decision not to go to Israel, even though your whole fortune with your husband had been sent to Israel, and you said, no, I want to go with my daughter to the United States. Talk about that people need to first decide what they want rather than what expectations are.
You know, I was very happy to go to Israel myself, but I had a very good friend who became a high-ranking officer in Israel, but she told me not to bring my little girl there because they were living in tents in the desert. And that's why I told my husband that he can go to Israel and I'm gonna go to America with my little girl. Otherwise, I would have been in Israel myself. So it's the choice I made because my little girl, I was told, would not get the same environment as I was going to. And that's how I came to America. But my husband and I were very, very active Zionists. My husband took a bunch of people. I was there myself, and met a wonderful psychiatrist. And we talked about, is it possible that there is something good in everything? There was something of a gift even in Auschwitz. And nobody, of course, talked about that because how can we find anything good in Auschwitz? And I think the God that I believe was with me, people ask me where was God in Auschwitz, I say, God was with me, and God allowed me and guided me to turn hatred into pity. I felt sorry for the guards that they're wearing this uniform, that they're taking children and they threw them into the oven without even gassing them. How could any human being can do that? But you know, my God told me this is temporary and I can survive it. So I was not allowing the Nazis to get to me. They could have thrown me in a gas chamber any minute. And today I say that self-love is self-care. It's not narcissistic. Because if you don't love you, and many times women tell me, Edith, I need a man. I gotta find a man. And I tell her, if I were a man, I would run from you because you find a whole person in you that you don't need a man. What you need in life is things without which you cannot survive. Okay, you need to breathe, you need to, can't, of course, live after 4 minutes. You have to sleep after 3 days, you hallucinate. So separate the needs from the wants. And I think dependency can breed depression. And I think God gave us the ability to be WHOLE, whole people, when we are recognizing that love is not what you feel, is what you do. And you are the father, and you are the role model to your children, the way you treat the children's mother.
Right.
Because children don't do what we feel. Children don't do what we say. Children do what they see.
And you talk a lot about that. You talk about the fact that we make our own prisons and that secrets can become our prison. That, you know, it's counterintuitive. You actually say that people should talk about what they are ashamed of or what they feel badly about, which is kind of counterintuitive.
It's very good because what comes out of your body doesn't make us ill. What stays in there does. You know, in Hungary, there is a saying to women, don't breathe down to your breast. And you know, when you go to the hospital and you see a cancer patient, she is the best patient in the world. She said, it's okay. When the children come, I don't tell them how I really feel. I tell them I'm fine. And you know, they create an image of themselves, which is not the true self, because you cannot become free until you go through the rage. You got to go through the rage, but don't get stuck in there. You
Right.
know, the Bible said, going through the valley of the shadow of death, but don't get stuck in the anger. And many people are totally addicted to the anger that will never, ever give you the joy and the passion that you deserve.
And that you should forgive yourself, you said.
I graduated with honors, and I never showed up for my graduation because I said to myself, I don't deserve it because they are dead. And when I was working with two paraplegics coming from Vietnam, and one of them was in a fetal position, why me, and cursing everyone and everything. And the other one said to me, you know, Doc, I'm sitting in a wheelchair and I'm so grateful that God gave me his eyes closer and I see the flower. And here I was with a white coat, Dr. Eger, Department of Psychiatry, and I felt like a biggest imposter. And I decided to go back to Auschwitz, to go back to that lion's den, look at the lion in the face, and reclaim my innocence and assign the shame and guilt to the perpetrator. That's why don't cover garlic with chocolate. Don't just think I forgive. No, I don't think any of us have godly powers to forgive, but I think we can forgive ourselves. I remember when I had a woman coming to see me with a big cross, a real big cross. And so I give everybody unconditional positive regard because I'm one of the colleagues of Viktor Frankl, but also Eric Fromm and
Seligman, yeah.
Unconditional positive regard. And of course, I do that with everyone, even the white supremacy child who came to see me. But then she looked at me and she said, I'm so happy that I finally found a good Christian counselor like you. And so I took a deep breath and I said to myself, that's okay. Jesus was a Jew. I'm fine with that. So I didn't say anything. And then she told me how angry she is because her husband cheated. And she went on and on and on and on. And very quietly I said, would you be so kind and repeat what I was saying? And she looked at me with a lot of anger. What? And I said, I forgive myself for putting judgment on my husband. Well, she wanted to kill me. How can I talk like that? The lady with the big cross. So what do? I bring down the big guns and I said, what did Jesus do to the woman who committed adultery? Told us, love thy neighbor as thyself. So what I'm saying is self-love is very important, that when you get up in the morning, you look in the mirror and you say, I love me. It's not narcissistic. And you decide what kind of day you're going to have. Because I look at life as one day. I tell people every moment is precious and we don't appreciate what we have until we lose it.
Right.
So I like people to go back as I did and go back to the lion's den. They don't have to go to Auschwitz as I do, but it's good to revisit the places where you've been. And if you are a child of a survivor, the question I ask you, when did your childhood end? Because children become parents of the parents. The children learn how to speak English, they learn how to eat peanut butter, they do, and my daughter got addicted to tuna fish and things I never saw in my life. And my little girl was 2 years old and she spoke 4 languages. So, you know, children grow up fast. It doesn't hurt them any, but that's when I asked, when did your childhood end? And the second question I asked, you may find it amusing. Would you like to be married to you?
Very good question. Today, Dr. Eger, many of us are suffering from a once-in-a-lifetime pandemic.
Yeah.
There's pain, a lot of pain, isolation, fear of sickness, unemployment.
Yeah.
How can we cope through this?
Well, you know, when you go to a 12-step meeting, they have a prayer. God gave me the serenity to accept what I cannot change, to which I add, namely other people, and change what I can change, to which I add, namely myself, and the wisdom to know the difference. How about if you look at it as a time-out period? How come that you start reading a book that you didn't have time for? How come that you take stock of the family dynamics and maybe the couple needs to be a little bit closer together? How come that you can maybe not sit down and write a constitution for the Roberts family or the Silverstein family, and that everybody takes responsibility? There is no freedom without responsibility, it's anarchy. School children didn't make it in Auschwitz. They were waiting for something to come, and that's a good definition of a victim, that you wait for someone to come and set you free. So I think it's very important to raise your children to see that your children can divorce their parents and have their own life and not calling you every day 10 times. That you really are giving your children an opportunity to become whole people, to be able to live their own lives and to trust that you did a good job as a parent. So my definition of love is
Right. One of the things I wanted to ask you in terms of what's been going on here, you know, there's a lot of anger in the United States today, a lot of movements by people. They're, you know, they're demonstrating in the streets. They're so angry over past injustice that everybody knows. But I guess the question is, do you feel that this is creating an atmosphere of victims, of victimhood, or do you think this is just something that has to be gone through?
I think it's okay to go out as long as it doesn't lead to violence.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We have the freedom of speech in America, and it's okay as long as it doesn't lead to anybody carrying any weapons and holding their sisters and brothers hostage or prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is
How do
a
you
way.
feel when you were growing up, and as you saw discrimination against Jews was tightening before the Nazis came?
Yes.
You said that it was safer to say you were not Jewish. It was safer to assimilate and never to stand out. And yet today, here in the United States, where it is safe to be Jewish, we find Jews are leaving the religion, especially in the United States. How do you view this?
I am a very proud Jew, and my parents sent me to a Jewish school. And when I came out, boys were spitting at me and calling me a Christ killer. And that was before Hitler. So you're not born with hate, you learn it.
Right.
Yeah, I think we need to speak out when you see that, because I know that Jewish people always talk to themselves. And every time you open your mouth, you may want to ask yourself, is it necessary? Is it very important? And most of all, is it kind?
Is it what?
Kind.
Kind, yes.
Kind. Especially I like kindness in man. Kindness goes very far with me. I'm afraid of every man. I do have PTSD. I can shiver easily still when I hear the fire engine, because I think I have to run to the basement because the bombs are gonna fall. You don't get over it. I don't know who tells you I got over it. I don't know that at all. I didn't come over it, but I came to terms with it, that I go through the valley of the shadow of death. I don't stay there. Chronic anger is hurting you. If you ask yourself as a Jew, is it good for me? That's what we used to ask in Europe. Is this good for the Jews? We always ask that. Is this good for the Jews? And my late husband always said, is this good for Israel? And if it's good for Israel, it has to be good for the whole world. And he was so totally committed to that wonderful Israel to grow. And even today, I understand that Israel makes the best marijuana, that the older people smoke pot because it helps them with their pain, with their whatever. It's not getting high, but if you have something going on with your breathing and whatever it is. So I think it's a miracle that I'm here with you. Truly a miracle.
Right.
I was among the dead when I was liberated.
Right. And one thing you also said, which I thought was very interesting, you said revenge is useless. And it's even
temporary.
Correct.
Temporary.
And you said that in order to move on, you were able to forgive Hitler.
What I am saying, that I don't have any godly power, but I have a power to liberate myself and give myself a gift that I can have joy and passion in life. And if I carry anger and hate, I'm still a prisoner. So I don't want to give Hitler a posthumous victory. And so revenge gives you a satisfaction, but I think it's temporary. Forgiveness is not about me forgiving you. It's really forgive are two words, forgive, and give the part in me that is still a hostage and a prisoner to be able to live every moment in life. I live in a present. I can only touch you now. So I ask people.
Yeah, we're running a little bit out of time, but I want to talk about the 4 questions. Yes. Not for Pesach, but yes. Your 4 questions that you say is the key to personal freedom, right? Yes. So number 1 is, what do I want?
Yes, that's a very important question. That you're not an idealist, but you're a realist. I cannot really be the ballerina that I really wanted to have, but I can still give you a high kick even now, and to be able to be a realist. So what do I want is very, very important to ask. The second one is more important, who wants it? Because we struggle between our own expectation versus trying to live up to someone else's expectation. So I see myself as a mother, and you, my son. I see myself like this earth. You see, I'm grounded well. But I don't see the little boy the same way, Big Father. I think the little boy is more competitive and looks at dad and makes a decision. I want to be just like him. or I want to be everything he's not. So when you grow up and you become an engineer or a rabbi or whoever, and you know that your father wanted you to join his business or become a doctor like he is, and he's disappointed, and that's okay because you give up your need for your father's approval.
Right.
So that's very important. If you want to have freedom, you have to give up the need for other people's approval. You see, but if you're a rebel, you say, I'm never going to be like him. And while you are trying to prove something, you're still a prisoner.
Right. And then number 3 is, what are you going to do about it?
Exactly. Because all the positive thinking doesn't mean a thing until it leads to positive action.
Right.
So when I go to schools around and I put on the board, I can't, and then I take the apostrophe and the T, and I say, I can. Why? Because I think I can. You know, that's the whole concept of cognitive therapy, to think about your thinking and pay attention what you're paying attention to.
Right.
Anything you pay attention to, you reinforce that behavior.
And the last question is when, I guess, is to do it now, right?
Exactly. Because if you're a perfectionist, you want to do it just right. When my little granddaughter was in a class when the IQ was 140 something, and she invited me, and the teacher called her my little red caboose, and she was a perfectionist. She would erase something a million times. And I told my little girl, because she wanted to get out of that class, she didn't think she's going to be able to keep up. And the first time I told her about Auschwitz, she was about 10 years old. And I succeeded, she went back. But when it was time in high school to write the autobiography to college, so the title was When the Caboose Became an Engine. And so she got into Princeton, she got a PhD at UCLA, and she's a professor of psychology now. So I think it's very important not to allow anybody to identify who you are. You're beautiful because God planted a seed and you got to watch it grow and use the right amount of water. And I think you, the beautiful Havan people, doing that. You give people hope in hopelessness.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Eger. And we have a number of questions, and I want to throw it to Rabbi Benji. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
May I ask a question, Norman Hauptmann?
Please do.
May I ask a question?
Please
Norman,
do.
put your question in the chat. We're going to take them from the chat, Norman.
Oh.
We're going to go through the questions in the chat, and you can keep on posting your questions. I'm going to scroll back a little bit towards the beginning in case of any questions that came up there. First of all, a few people said that they're great admirers of yours and how much they enjoyed the book. And then, okay, there was a question about, okay, someone asked, they may have missed something. Did your husband go with you and your daughter to the United States? And the answer was no, he went to Israel, correct?
No, my husband came, he went out to the train and they were calling his name and he was hiding, and then he came back and we ended up in Rothschild Hospital where the American people, the Jewish population, gave us food and clothes to wear, and we were able to come to America in 1949.
Yeah, Dr. Eger, but you actually did go with your husband. Your husband wanted to go to Israel, but you said you're going to take your daughter to the United States, and he gave in. So you did. The family came together.
He gave in. We let everything go to Israel, and we came to America penniless. I didn't have $6 to get off the boat, I didn't speak a word of English. And look at me now. You see, it's possible to make everything in life an opportunity for growth. My late husband became a CPA. So when my daughter brought back the man who was going to marry, and my husband whispered to my ear, is he ever gonna make a living? And I said, yes, he only got the Nobel Prize in 2003 in economics. His name is Robert Engel. So my husband just wanted to be an old-fashioned father, knowing that my daughter is going to be cared for. And my daughter is a brilliant psychologist herself. And she also is a sports psychologist. And now they are in San Diego because she teaches at NYU. And NYU is now that one nice close. So, you know, it's very important to not really complain what is not. It's just, yes, I am, and yes, I can, and yes, I will. I like yeses rather than I don't want that. I rather be for something. And I remember that I was very, very suicidal after I was liberated because I was in a cast and I could hardly speak. And I found out that my parents are not coming back. And reality hit me. And I know that God told me, if you die, you'll be a coward. But if you live, I'm going to give you something to live for. And I'm so grateful that I am a member of the Healing Arts profession.
That's beautiful. Thank you. We have a question here. What in your life tests your resilience now?
The resiliency is the ability to look at everything from many different perspectives, to give up the all or nothing mentality, not to be rigid, but to be flexible, to go where you are and learn. I always meet people where they are, but treat them as if they were what I would like them to be. I want to be a good guide, so they would fire me. The quicker, the better, that they can truly do for themselves. And I never do anything until I know that they can also do to themselves. I don't create any kind of dependency, but I am there. I am there meeting people where they are. And I ask you not to cheer up a depressed person, because if they tell you that their pinky is really hurting, and you may want to say that I just saw someone who doesn't have arms, that's not going to make that person feel better. Now they're going to feel guilty that they shouldn't feel the way they feel. And the way you meet people, give up the word understand, just say sounds like, and throw in a feeling word. And don't worry what kind of feeling word, because they will correct you. You may say, I may say sounds like you angry about it. And they say, what do you mean angry? I'm mad as hell. You see, I'm thinking good. See, just throw out the hard language, and to become a compassionate listener. And I know I don't have to tell you that, because you are a compassionate listener. I know that because I experience you everywhere, all over the world.
Thank you.
In South Africa, everywhere. Okay, so I think that you have created a world that our precious God wants us to truly carry the love and the joy and the passion and having purpose in life. I don't have time to be against them, and I don't carry any kind of numbers with me. If I go out with a man and he wants to know how old I am, I'm gonna say good night, because I'm not interested in numbers. I'm interested in joy and passion. And then they want to ask, how old were you when you were in Auschwitz? and I'm thinking, go home. You know, if you want to have fun with me, if you want to go dancing with me, if you want to really, truly have a joyful time, fine. But don't tell me about your ex-wife. And I do that for money. So they usually tell me their problems, and I'm thinking, no, honey, that's not. I went to school, and my late husband said, you know, I spent $500,000 for your education, and you give it away. Yes, I give it away a lot of the time, but not when I see somebody just trying to suck and get as much out of me. And I think it's very good to teach people how to be assertive, but not non-assertive or aggressive. Some people are aggressive and they think they are assertive.
Great.
But that takes more time for me to lecture to you that we don't have time now. But I think it's a wonderful interview. And I had a wonderful Hungarian woman who lived in your neighborhood many, many years ago. She spoke like 8 languages, and she moved to New York, and I know the neighborhood because I went to visit her. So you live in a wonderful neighborhood in New York, and I know that right now, no Broadway, no opera, and hopefully this is just temporary.
I have a personal question. How have you managed to keep your sense of humor?
I don't have a very good sense of humor. I don't like cynicism or sarcasm, but I like philosophical humor. And I think that what kept us alive in Auschwitz, we were able to find some humor, and we were able to even fight over the Hungarian recipes, how much paprika you put here and how much chocolate you put there. We were constantly eating. And I studied with Abraham Maslow, and the hierarchy of needs really fits me completely, because that's all we talked about was food. And then when your belly is full, then you look for safety needs. And when you have safety needs met and your hunger, that comes the love need that you want to share it with someone.
Right. Thank you. Someone else asked, you mentioned or you spoke about guilt. And are you referring to the guilt of the survivor? What type of guilt are you referring to?
Guilt is a tremendous guilt and tremendous shame as well. I don't know where the shame came from, but when I graduated with honors, I could not ever forgive myself that I survived. And I didn't show up for my graduation. Today, I won't do that. I think guilt is in the past. Worry is in the future. Worry is the most neurotic emotion. If you worry about someone, you're wasting your time, because worry is never over something good. You always worry about something bad to happen, and then you make come true what you fear. So just be very careful about that. I think the guilt is okay when you have done something and you are responsible for that. But I think most of all, guilt is about what could have done and should have done. And my parents had tickets to come to America and they didn't use it. If we knew then, if I knew then what I know now, I would have done things very differently. I would have done things very, very differently. And that's why self-forgiveness is the hardest.
Thank you. Someone else asked about books. The meaning of life was pivotal for you. What other books inspire you?
What other books? I don't read fiction, but I like people who are having courage enough. And I just finished a book My name is Selma, and she's 98 years old, and she worked in the resistance, and she lives in Amsterdam. I like to make contact with her and to really have courage to join the resistance, and she did. And she wrote a book about it. I just finished it last night. So I like to read stories, and if you write your book, just send it to me, and hopefully I will say a few words that your book is going to be published. I'm very fortunate to have Simon and Schuster and the wonderful people who are promoting now my second book.
Thank you.
People wanted to have something practical, and this is the practical self-help book.
Exactly. Two last questions, and then we have to stop. It's almost 8 o'clock. Number one, someone asked, what's your best piece of advice for us?
Oh, find the God within you that will never ever give up.
Right. That's great.
Thank you for that last one. That was the best I've heard all month.
Thank you. And one last question, if I may. So we have a group of rabbis on this Zoom, and we're all getting ready for the high holidays. And we have beautiful communities. I think we've all noticed that there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of fear, worry, bitterness, anger. Many people are not in a very good state, unfortunately. Can you share with us what you think we should share with our communities? What would be the message that we should be sharing?
I think one of the good questions that we can all give ourselves is this the best I can do? Because the holidays have to do with new beginnings, not going back. So imagine that you're pregnant and I am your midwife, and you're gonna give birth to you that was meant to be free. Find that freedom within you and embrace yourself and love yourself, because your children will never do what you say, they do what they see. So go and really tell your wife, your husband, that maybe your relationship could maybe improve a bit, because that happens. And now people go on each other's nerves, and maybe find a way for you to say that maybe it's time to really give birth to our genuine self that we gave up for the family. Now I know that firstborn children, when they marry another firstborn, you're gonna have two bosses. Middle children like to be peacemaker, but the youngest children we call in a family.
Very good. Thank you.
Charming manipulator.
Right.
Are you a youngest child in your family? We call young people charming manipulator. You know, I was the youngest in my family, and I would always go to the place where my father was playing billiards, and then I would ask him for money, and he was just very generous with me. My mother wouldn't put up with that, but I think I was a pretty charming manipulator myself. But I know that I spent a lot of time alone. And my ballet master, who was Jewish, told me that God built me in such a way that all my ecstasy, I never knew that word. My ecstasy has to come from inside out. So be congruent. Think about your thinking and see in what way you can become a good parent to you. And you also want to give yourself permission. That's a very good word, to permission to be able to breathe and feel and heal. You can't heal what you don't feel. I think all therapy is grief, not what happened, but what didn't happen.
Right. Thank you so much. Just before we end the evening, first of all, if anyone wants the recording, please email either me or one of your rabbis. We'll send you the recording in case you want to listen to something again. That was truly inspirational. We really, really appreciate that you took the time to inspire us. And I want to wish you, Dr. Eger, and everyone else on the Zoom, a kesiva v'chasima tova, a sweet and good new year, a healthy year, a year of only nachas and good things. Only
Same to you. Thank you. And thank you, Alec, and thank you, Rabbi Abraham, and all of you here. I want to wish you all the best, and remember, there'll never ever be another you. You're unique, one of a kind, beautiful child of God. So shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
Thank you.
Katie. Thank you, Katie.
Absolutely. Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful
Bye.
day. Take care.
Bye.